call.
I'll turn your mics on, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gavel first or?
Gavel first.
Oh, fun. Call to order the meeting of Historic Preservation Commission. This is June 16th, 2026. Roll call.
Lynn here. Tracy here.
Kelly Toon here.
Tammy Ramsey here.
Dan's here.
Great. Who's that? Dan. Oh, Dan.
And the Pledge Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next would be the approval of the regular agenda.
I have one amendment to the agenda, due to time constraints tonight. I would request that the discussion direction item, historic preservation plan update, be moved to the next agenda.
I'm fine with it. I'd rather have Ken or Robert here anyhow.
Okay, everybody good?
All approved?
Awesome.
Ayes.
Motion for that amendment.
So, I
Go on to the next thing.
go on to the next one. Approval of minutes.
I need a
Or-
motion.
I need a motion to approve.
Now I need my
To approve, how would you say, postpone?
amendment to tonight's agenda. I make a motion to amend
Make a
tonight's agenda.
Motion to amend tonight's agenda.
Discussion to the next meeting.
There you go. That works.
You're much better at it.
Okay, motion by Lynn. Second by
Kelly?
Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now approval of the minutes.
Now approval of the minutes for May 5th, 2016. I was not there, so this 2026, sorry.
Just
You did say 2018.
16.
Oh, 60.
I'm a bit dyslexic.
You don't worry.
I'm good with math, but I'm dyslexic. Sorry.
But no, I would do that. That's what I would do.
Do we have any amendments to the minutes?
I didn't see any. Did you read them? I did read them. I'm sorry, but I kept saying I was excused absent, but I showed up. So
You showed up.
that was the only. No, they're good.
So all good?
We make a motion to approve the minutes of May 5th, 2026.
I
Second.
second that.
I'll second it.
No, we're okay.
Okay, next, number 5, declaration of conflict of interest. Does anybody have anything?
No.
No?
Nope.
No, I'm also good. Public comments next.
Yes, if anybody has anything on that is not on tonight's agenda, now would be the time to say that from the public. You are our only member of the public. Do you have anything to say? Great. We're moving on.
Nothing? Any jokes?
Intern related jokes.
Or lettuce or history? Okay, we'll go on to special presentations.
Yes, so we are here, or Dr. Lindsay Flowing is here from History Colorado to conduct the quadrennial CLG audit, certified local government audit, and also speak to y'all about general certified local government orientation things. Take it away.
Do I need to turn this on?
No, it should be on.
Good. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Like Madison said, I'm Lindsay Flewelling, Preservation Planner, Certified Local Government Coordinator at History Colorado. I haven't been here since 2022, so it's been
Wow, has it really been that long?
yeah, the very early meetings of the HPC. So yeah, I thought I would take the chance to just do a brief CLG orientation and then hear from you guys what you're thinking as far as building up momentum for the preservation program moving forward. So it's my first slide with content. It's this one. So just an overview of what historic preservation entails. It's the study designation, protection, and physical preservation of buildings, structures, sites, objects, and districts. So there can be a variety of different types of resources that are covered under historic preservation, as you guys have done with like the water tower. You can also do like bridges and statues. We have some murals that are listed like by themselves and separate from the building they're on, which is kind of interesting. So there are different types of resources that can be preserved. Next slide. And then why preserve? It helps to increase community identity and pride, reduces landfill waste, helps to revitalize downtowns, can bring people in for heritage tourism, and help to generate jobs as you're rehabilitating properties. It can help increase property values, support small businesses since they are more easily located in these potentially smaller historic spaces. And then it can also be used to create affordable housing in properties that are already existing as well. And then of course there's different reasons, you know, for each community that they might have to do historic preservation. So our National Historic Preservation Framework was created as part of the National Historic Preservation Act in 1966. This created a framework with the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior at the federal level, and then each state created a state historic preservation office as part of the National Historic Preservation Act. And then that was amended in 1980 to create the Certified Local Government Program. So you have the federal, state, and local set up for historic preservation that we have today. And then the next slide shows, so at the federal level, our partners are the National Park Service. At the state level, it's the State Historic Preservation Office, which is History Colorado in Colorado. And we also call it the Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. So all of those things would be the same thing for you guys as your statewide resource. And then at the local level, you'll have your local Historic Preservation Commission. And then, sorry, Madison, also on that slide in italics, you can see there's nonprofit partners at each level. So we have at the federal level, the National Trust for Historic Preservation. At the state level, there's Colorado Preservation Inc. They're the ones that put on our statewide preservation conference, the Saving Places Conference each year. And we have another statewide nonprofit, Colorado Historical Foundation. They do a lot of preservation easements. And then they have a low interest loan program as well for rehabilitation projects. And then at the local level, there's often local historical societies, or sometimes there's a local preservation nonprofit that helps to promote preservation in the community. Like I was just in Greeley last night, and they've got Historic Greeley that are able to act as advocates for preservation in the community. So yeah, there's different resources depending on your local area, but that's sort of the framework for federal, state, and local partnerships. So for the Certified Local Government Program, it's a local government partnership with the federal and state governments. And essentially your preservation program is certified as fitting the parameters for the federal and state parameters for historic preservation programs. There's currently 70 CLGs in Colorado. We actually had 3 added last year, which was really exciting. So the new ones are Rangeley, Inglewood, and Silverton. And then before that, you guys were the most recent one. So
Oh, wow, there's like a 4-year gap.
yes,
Wow, okay.
yeah. So it's kind of,
I'm surprised Silverton was already on there.
I know that was like
Yeah, I
the
am
one
too.
when I started my job, you know, 5 years ago. I was like really amazed that they were on there. They had to they had an interesting relationship with the county, so they had to rework their whole county relationship so that the HPC wasn't just in the county, it was it's now in the town. So that took all these ordinance things take forever. But yeah, there's about 2,100 nationwide, and you can see we've got a good spread across the state. So for the benefits of the Certified Local Government Program, we have our specific CLG grants. You guys have the current one right now with the survey projects, but those are for things that directly benefit your local government preservation program, like preservation plans, surveys and survey plans, design guidelines, ordinance updates if you needed to hire an outside attorney, education and outreach projects and things like that. So those are for up to $25,000 and no matches required. And those are generally due every January or February. We've had a little bit of like flux in the timeline because of the federal funding element, but we've had steady funding the past 4 years, so that's really great, and hopefully that will continue. You're also eligible for National Park Service preservation grants. They just, interestingly, so they had this like long delay of announcing their grants, and then I think they have like 8 open right now for preservation projects. So, so it's a good idea to keep an eye out on those, although they are a little intimidating to have to apply for. Just the federal grant processes. I mean, we try to keep the state process much easier than the federal process. Your locally designated properties, and if you ever end up having a local historic district, any contributing properties to the district are eligible for our state tax credits, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. And then any projects that have a public benefit, so usually like commercial properties or government or nonprofit owned properties, would be eligible for the State Historical Fund grants as well. There's also access to Compass, which is our statewide cultural resource database. Like your survey forms that were just completed by Ron will get added onto that, and I'm sure he looked through and did a file search to see what was already in there. So I'm guessing there wasn't like a ton of information, but if you're ever wondering what's already been collected about the local area, that's the database that has all of the different things that have already occurred, so you don't like repeating past work. We also have training, so we do scholarships for the Saving Places Conference each year, and then I do a every other month webinar series. So the one coming up in June is on effective engagement. So we'll have that next Wednesday. Greeley, Golden, and Crested Butte are all going to present on their different engagement projects. So that should be really good. And then we'll have one in August that's about like GIS mapping for disaster resilience purposes, which I think will be super helpful for our Colorado communities. And then the offsetting months, so every other month we do a regional forum, so you can hear from people in your region what's going on in their communities.
Can I ask you something? Are those open to the public?
They are.
Are they something that we could run around just?
Yeah, you can join
Zoom too?
anytime, and they're usually on Wednesdays at noon. And then I don't record the forums, so people don't feel like they have to be self-conscious about like what they're sharing about their community, but I record all the regular webinars. So if you can't make it that day, I can always send it.
Did you say Greeley?
Yeah,
Golden?
Greeley, Golden, and Crested Butte.
Crested Butte. Thank you.
They've all had good recent community engagement projects. Yeah, happy to have you join anytime.
So maybe at the end, you could kind of show us where to go to kind of see the schedule of events.
Yeah, I send it out to Madison, and then I can also add you to my newsletter list, and you can get that each month. That would be helpful. Yeah, there's technical preservation support. So if you're ever wondering either like what to do in your local government, or if there's like a preservation project, you're just not sure, what the proper procedures would be or treatments of the property, you can always reach out and I'll find the person in our office who knows the answer. Like for example, we had one in Westminster where there was some graffiti on historic masonry and they didn't know like what products would be most appropriate to use. So I reached out to a person in the State Historical Fund who's able to advise on best practices for graffiti removal. So it could be anything, and I'll happy to help direct you to the right person for that. And then there's a formal role in the National Register review process, and then commenting on any federal undertakings, which are usually any federally licensed or funded projects. I would think here you might see like sometimes there's highway projects or like cell towers that might come to, or like in the metro area, we see like HUD funded housing projects and things like that. So on the flip side for certified local government responsibilities, the first one is to enforce your own local preservation ordinance. So that means that you know what's in your ordinance, you're following your own procedures and rules that you set for yourself. And that's part of my job is to just like make sure that everybody's following their own rules. Establish and maintain a commission. So each CLG has to have a commission with at least 5 members that meets at least 4 times a year. Send meeting minutes over to our office, provide for adequate public participation. So both, appropriately posting your HPC meetings and having time in the meeting for public comments. And then if you're doing a preservation planning or survey project, making sure that there's room for the public to be able to provide input into that project. Whether or not you successfully get members of the public is, a different question, but at least having that opportunity available. Maintaining a system of survey and inventory. So I would generally expect a CLG in a smaller community to have a survey project every like 5 to 10 years. But I'm hoping that you guys will be able to build on the momentum of the current project and go for a grant, hopefully in the somewhat near future. So that's why we provide CLG grants so that you're able to, be able to find out more about your resources, and then hopefully that'll lead to designation and protection of the properties over time. One person from your commission needs to attend a SHPO approved training each year. So that's an HPC member. So that would be like attending one of the webinars or going to the Saving Places conference or attending any other type of historic preservation training. And then every year there's an annual report that's due in November that Madison helps take care of for you guys. And every 4 years is the CLG evaluation. So for that, I'm attending an HPC meeting. We'll have a staff meeting in a few weeks or at least sometime before the end of the year. And then I do a file review of all of the annual reports that are on file. Like when you're doing your preservation plan updates, I'll take a look at those once it's complete. Anything else that's been happening over the past 4 years. And then I issue an evaluation report toward the end of the year. So that's the CLG program in a nutshell. Do you guys have any other questions about that?
I was curious if I should ask her about the barn project and possible grants for that. Or is that?
You can certainly ask. Yeah, I think so.
We do have a project where we're relocating the old barn. And is there certain grants that would be applicable for that through History Colorado?
So it's possible. So it's basically impossible to get a grant for actual relocation, but if you wanted to get a grant for rehabilitation of the barn after it's in its new location, as long as it's designated and it's got some sort of public benefit argument, then you could apply for a state historical fund grant.
Okay, so once we get it moved in.
Yeah, it's just relocation specifically is not like allowed to be funded because it's generally.
Well, this is gonna be a work in progress.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, even like relocation obviously is better than demolishing a property, but it's generally not seen as good preservation practice. So it's like specifically not allowed to be funded by the state historical fund, but they can fund properties after they've been moved.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question. You mentioned on the federal level that National Park Services grants, I think you said there's 8.
Yeah, there's various ones out right now.
On that one.
They're in different categories. So a lot of the ones currently, so they have like a semi-quincentennial grant. If you know any properties that were in Colorado, be archaeological resources from before 1815. But then the other ones that could potentially be applied for by Colorado CLGs, they have an underrepresented communities grant, and they take underrepresented communities to be a pretty wide definition. So for example, if you wanted to study like immigrant minors and their resources associated with them, like that would potentially be something that could be funded through that. There's a couple of other like history of equal rights and African-American civil rights grant as well. So some of them aren't really applicable to Colorado, but they do fund like survey work, National Register nominations, and then actually physical preservation work on properties.
Has that been kind of curtailed with the new administration? Like, just because I know the National Park Service has been changed in general since.
So the only thing
2024.
It's been interesting to see, like in each year, Congress has funded the same amount of grants as the previous year. So the actual grant amount has stayed steady. It's just that it's like the announcement of these grants is like a year delayed. So I don't know what that will do to the actual project timelines. So the grants that they just announced, they announced all these grants like over the past like 2 or 3 week period. They're all FY25 grants, which is significant because FY25 started in October of 2024. So it's quite delayed, but I assume that since they've been announced, they'll actually award them, and then there won't be any issues with the funding moving forward after that. So that's been interesting to see like the timing aspect, but yeah. And then our office is funded by a federal grant as well. So like I get paid through a federal grant, and then the CLG grant program is through a federal grant, since we're carrying out nationwide programs on the federal government's behalf. And that's all stayed level. Like I said, through the last 4 years, it's been the same. So
Thank you.
yeah. So next, I just wanted to talk about some of the elements of local government preservation programs. So like I mentioned earlier, the local preservation ordinance is really the backbone of everything you guys do. And it's really important, if you haven't read your ordinance recently, to make sure you're familiar with that. It's chapter 19 of your municipal code, not too long or anything. So yeah, it shouldn't be super boring to read through, but it establishes the commission, outlines all of your powers and duties. It lets you know what criteria you should be looking at for designation and design review, and what procedures to follow. So that's really the backbone of everything that you do as a Historic Preservation Commission. So just like to have that reminder to know your own ordinance, so that both you know what to expect, as a Historic Preservation Commission. And that's also where you can point the public if they're wondering why you're doing something in a certain way. You're following your ordinance that's been, through a public hearing process and approved by your town board. Similarly, you have your rules of procedure. I think your rules of procedure were like for all commissions in town. Yeah. So that's great to be able to be familiar with and know that you can fall back on that. Then you'll have your decision making sort of guided by those rules of procedure, the agendas that you set. So making sure that you're sticking to the topics that are laid out on your agenda each time you meet, and not having, like, you can talk about things that aren't on the agenda, but not having major decisions made if the item's not on the agenda, because the public, again, doesn't know that they should have shown up to talk about that item if they cared about it. Making sure that you're preparing appropriately for any designation or design review cases, and following your procedures that you have for those cases. Making sure that you're making appropriate or taking appropriate actions as a board, and making motions in a clear manner, keeping meeting minutes, and along with that, a decision record. And it's really up to you and I guess your town attorney on what that decision record includes, but it's usually like the staff report, as well as your meeting minutes that is part of the public record. And then making sure that you have public transparency in everything that you're doing. And that helps lead to defensible decision making. So making sure that all of your decisions are based on the facts and the established criteria and guidelines that you have. The decision should be accurately documented and explained. And then, just as reminders, commissioners should not make decisions based on your personal taste, opinions of the applicant, because obviously they want you to do what they are asking for. So it's important to evaluate their assertions, in an objective manner. Opinions about the potential uses of the property. And I think this is where I see HPCs sort of stepping out of their like the bounds of what they should be making decisions about the most, where they are asking a lot about future use of the property, when that's just not really within the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. You're interested in the, what they're doing to the building, not how they might use it, even though it's always fun to hear about like economic development projects and things like that. It's not in the purview of the HPC. And then you shouldn't base any decisions on information that's not in the public record. So if you happen to know something, you should make sure that it's clear that that's information that's out there, or that it's not influencing your decision. decisions should be based on your ordinance, rules and procedures, your formal survey and designation information. So that will be super helpful when you're making decisions about properties, since with the survey, Ron outlined like character defining features of properties and periods of significance and things like that. And then your design review criteria and guidelines that are part of your ordinance. And then any decisions should be clearly stated, avoiding unclear directives, so that you have that, for the future. And then some other elements of local preservation programs: survey, designation, design review, incentives, and then advocacy and public education. So survey is really the basis for your historic preservation program. You need to know what you have before you can preserve it. It's the ongoing process of locating and describing buildings, sites, structures, and districts that could be potentially significant at the local, state, or national level. It allows you to document those historic resources and the changes over time. So even if something isn't ever going to be landmarked, it's good to have a survey so that you can see those changes over time. That will help you make future planning decisions for the town. There's different survey types. So you guys just did, we would call it a windshield survey, but it's at the basic level, like a reconnaissance overview of the town. And then you had the intensive level forms for a few properties. And then you can also do archaeological survey. And there's also different methodologies. So comprehensive survey is when you're looking at every single property within a geographic area, and selective survey is when you're just looking at, you make a decision on like what the theme is that you're going to survey, and just look at those properties that might be like dotted around town. So for example, a selective survey might be of like every government building or every church, every school, or buildings that are a certain age. That there's lots of different options with that. Along with survey, you'll also have historic context studies. And I know that was a really big part of this particular project. So it's essentially taking the history of the town and tying it to the built environment. So you're saying like, in this era, these things happened, and then this part of town was built up in response to that or as part of that movement. So it's really like the history told through the building and development of the town. And then there's other HPC tools that include preservation plans and survey plans, which is essentially like when you like split up the different sections of town that you want to do survey on for the future. But you guys probably don't need a formal survey plan, but it'd be good to like have an idea of different areas that haven't been covered yet and what you want to look at in the future. So once you have your survey done, then you can move forward with designating properties. So creating local landmarks and potentially local historic districts. We have the National Register of Historic Places, the State Register of Historic Properties, and then you have your own local register. The eligibility should be based on significance and integrity, which I'll talk about more in a minute. Your criteria are established in your ordinance. And then districts have their own separate criteria. So some places require like 100% of owners to agree to have a district. Some places require like 50% of owners to agree to have a district in a certain area. And then districts almost always have some properties that are contributing and then some properties that are non-contributing. So it's perfectly fine to have those mixed in together in a district. So the next slide shows for designation, there are these pillars of eligibility. So on the one side, you have the significance of the property. So why was it important in history? Is it a significant commercial development? Was it significant for its educational purposes? Is it significant for its architecture? Is it significant for its archaeology? So all the different pieces of its history that make it important. And so that's the areas of significance. And then you also have a period of significance. So what time period did those important things happen at that property? So that's the period that you want to make sure that the property still represents. And then integrity is how the property conveys its significance. So that's where you're looking at, if you were a person who lived in Minturn in 1920, would you recognize that property from that era now? And I know that can be kind of tricky when you've had properties that have changed significantly over time, but are still like really important. And I think that's where having a geographic criteria in your ordinance is really great, because I think that that really recognizes properties that have changed over time, but still add to the sense of place here. Like if you lost one of those buildings, even if it had changed significantly over time, like the Eagle River Inn property, it would not feel like Minturn in that part of town anymore. So that's where it could potentially be eligible under the geographic criteria. So once you designate properties, then you have design review, which is review of alterations, relocation, and demolition of properties. Again, this is based on your local ordinance and the designation information. So once you've designated a property, then you'll know, the period of significance, the character defining features, and what makes that property important. So what needs to be saved, and what can be, sort of negotiated or changed for each property. The compliance with design review can be voluntary or mandatory, depending on how it's set up in your ordinance. But either way, it needs to be consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards, which you guys readopted last year. So I know that's in your ordinance as well. So the next slide shows the Secretary of the Interior standards. There's 4 sets of Secretary of the Interior standards for preservation, but the one that we use usually when looking at alterations of a historic property are the standards for rehabilitation, and they're pretty flexible. So the whole point is to allow for new uses or continuing modern uses of a property. So like if a property had an outhouse, you're definitely allowed to add a bathroom in the house. You can make it suitable for modern living. And there's just these 10 standards that are pretty broad. They have to apply to every single type of property in the United States. So that's why they're broad standards. But if you guys are ever wondering, how to apply a standard to a property, they do have really great guidelines on each of the standards. So I'd be happy to send that over if it comes up, or we can always talk through something particular. But yeah, so it's choose a compatible new use. You don't want a new use that changes the property, that like forces the property to be changed so much that it's no longer recognizable. But it can be like a pretty broad new use. Like it was just in Buena Vista, and they turned a county machine shop into a daycare, and it still looks like the machine, like you'd be able to recognize it as a machine shop on the outside, but obviously the inside is totally different because it's a daycare.
There's a house that got to a restaurant.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so sometimes it definitely works, and we love having adaptive reuse projects like that. But sometimes it's like if you're going to turn that building into this totally different thing, you have to change it so much that it's no longer recognizable. So yeah, there's a great like Texaco in Newcastle that's now a brewery/cafe. That's a really cool building. So it still looks like the Texaco on the outside.
And that's in Newcastle?
Yeah.
To check it out.
Yeah, that town, like that part of town is very cute. So I like going by there. Retain historic character. So making sure that any character defining features are still retained. Ensuring that the property tells the true story of development. This happens a lot with, in mining towns with like Victorian architecture, where people think that they can make a house look like more Victorian by adding all these like little gingerbread elements. But very few houses in a mining town would have had those fancier gingerbread elements. They would have been much more vernacular, and like you wouldn't have had highly skilled architects or designers in the town. So it would tell a false story of how the town developed over time if you added all these like fake Victorian elements to the property. So that's what number 3 means. The property is telling the true story of development and not like adding fake historic elements onto the property. Consider historic changes as potentially significant. So this could be, you could have an original property and then it had an addition 50 years later, but maybe that addition was added on during a really significant part of the building's history. And it's already been, another 50 years. So that addition in itself would become significant. I'm sure there's examples of that in town here, since obviously there's been a lot of change over time, but let's say like the this addition on like the Holy Toledo consignment store becomes 50 years old. That to me is like a geographic, you know, significantly like property for its geographic significance in town. So once it turns 50 years old, and if it still was like a commercial business, then it could potentially be designated, even though it has this addition on it that makes it no longer work like as a church.
Can I ask a question? What if they want to take it back to the original?
So they could potentially do that if it had significance for its original use as well. So sometimes you'll have like multiple periods of significance. So you might have a property that's significant for its architecture. So the period of significance would be the year that it was constructed. And then like for that property, you could have a period of significance for the actual church portion. So if there was more research done on how the church may have played a role in the community and acted as a community gathering space, if there were events held there that weren't just church services, but had like a wider community role, then it could be significant for that period. And then if it's really important as a commercial operation, so then you have like 3 periods of significance for the property. As long as you're taking it back to one of those periods where it was significant, that's usually fine. Yeah, next is preserve distinctive features of the property, repair rather than replace as your first go-to step if possible. Avoid destructive treatments. This is usually like power washing historic masonry where like it'll just start falling apart if you're doing that, or usually it has to do with washing where you're just like concerned with historic materials starting to fall apart. Protect archaeological resources. So in general, if somebody finds archaeological resources, you want to keep them in place so they retain their context. But if they are in an area where they might be targeted for looting, then you would want to work with the state to like put them in an appropriate repository. But yeah, we were looking at one property, I think it was a house in Jefferson County where they had found like various indigenous resources like arrowheads and some like metates and things like that. But they had taken them all out of the ground and were just like keeping them in their basement. And that takes away the context. You don't know where they were found exactly and can't really evaluate their significance because they were just all taken into, away from their setting. So it's really important to keep archaeological resources in their own setting if possible. And then the last 2 are about new additions. So if you have a new addition to a property, you want it to be designed to be sympathetic to the original. So you generally speaking don't want an addition that's like 2 times the size of the original resource. So you don't even see the original historic resource when you're looking at the property. And then make new additions reversible. So that's why historians really like having like hyphens on an addition. So it's not like touching too much of the historic fabric of the building, or just making sure that it's something that if you wanted to take it off in the future, you could while still retaining the historic resource.
Like say ballroom.
That may not be reversible.
But they can take the cage down. Hopefully they will.
So yeah, if you have a design review case, those are the main things to look at, and not every case will have all of those applied to it. So you're just looking at the standards that are most applicable for the individual project. So the next one to think about are incentives. Some local governments have local incentives. I would say that currently a lot of them are on hold because local budgets are in very difficult situation right now. But there are things like parking exemptions and other like zoning variances and things like that that can be done without having significant budgetary impact on the town. At the state and federal level, we're really lucky in Colorado to have both a residential and commercial tax credit program. And since you guys are in a rural area, you get the highest benefit from those. So for the residential tax credit, it's worth 35% of rehabilitation expenditures, which is, essentially like if person is rehabilitating their historic house, they get a third of their cost back in tax credits. And so this credit is greatly improving in 2027, where if you do a tax credit project and complete it after January 1st of 2027 for the residential credit, then you'll get the tax credit back as a refund as part of your when you file your taxes. So finish the project in 2027, file your taxes in 2028, and as part of your refund check, you'll get the tax credit amount. So it should be way easier to use, and that's for up to $100,000. So if you did a $300,000 project on your property and you get, it's not exactly 35%, but you'll get 35% back, so you can get a check for up to $100,000 back for the residential tax credit. So we're really hoping that encourages more residential landmarks in our CLGs. For the commercial tax credit, that is for up to $1 million in tax credits. It needs to be a property that's used for income generating purposes. And private property owners or nonprofits can apply for that one. Those are again for 35% of your rehabilitation expenditures. And in general, so rehabilitation expenditures, we always say, like, if you take the property and shake it, turn it upside down and shake it, anything that falls out would not count as a qualified expenditure, but stuff that like sticks with the property permanently is. So your, exterior siding treatments, roofing, window repair, replacement, foundation work, and then also like mechanical systems, plumbing, electrical, HVAC can all be part of those tax credits. And and then we have the State Historical Fund. Those are grants for up to $250,000. For the town's purposes, those could include things like future survey projects or other like education outreach projects as well. But most of what they fund is physical construction work on properties, and then also like planning documents for that work. So like construction documents and things like that as well. So those are due every April 1st and October 1st. And they give out about $12 million worth of grants each year. That grant funding comes from gaming taxes in Cripple Creek, Central City, and Blackhawk. So it's a separate funding source from like the CLG grants or other federal funding. And then there's that revolving loan fund that's operated by the Colorado Historical Foundation. And then there's also a federal rehabilitation tax credit for income generating properties of 20%. So if you have any properties that ended up on the national register, they could potentially apply for the federal tax credits and then layer them with the state tax credits and get up to 55% back in their rehabilitation expenditures.
Can I ask a question about that? Like, are the easements that for the local, are those similar to like a conservation easement? Whereas, you kind of say, well, I'm going to dedicate this property, but you can't build on it. But like, can you give me an example?
It is similar to that. So it falls under some of the same rules as the conservation easement. You just work with an organization like, well, it'd be Colorado Historical Foundation or Colorado Preservation Inc. And they are easement holders. So essentially, the current property owner would work with them to put a preservation easement on. And then that easement holder would make sure that any future work follows the Secretary of the Interior standards. So you can still change the property or like add additions and things like that, but you're maintaining the historic structure. So it really protects it from demolition and protects the character features of the property in perpetuity.
Okay.
And then there's some like easement tax credits available.
Is that a widely used tool? Or
I'm not sure like how many properties really do that in Colorado, but I know I get asked about conservation easements all the time. So
because you would, if you sold the property, it stays in perpetuity, right. But you're saying probably I'll get a lower value for it if I sell it, likely.
Potentially. I mean, but that's really up to I guess it's up to the property owner on how much they want the property to be preserved into the future.
But it's not just for property. You have to have something on the property.
So conservation easement would be different, but yeah, if it's a historic preservation easement, there needs to be something that you're preserving. Yeah, there's like, if you don't have any buildings, there's like land trusts and things like that.
I was just clarifying.
Great. And then, yeah, the last part of your historic preservation program is advocacy and public education. So that's reaching out to your local community members and making sure they like understand and get excited about being in a great historic community, sharing your survey documents, things like that, going to different public events and making sure people know that there's a historic preservation commission, working with your town board and being on the same page for like common goals. So that's a really important part of your historic preservation program as well. So the next couple slides, I was put together a few things just to think about planning for the future of your preservation program. So I think we missed one.
Yeah, advocacy and public education. You did
There we
that
go.
right? But I had a question on that.
Yeah.
Celebrate Preservation Month. Is there a month or do you
Yes.
make your own?
So Preservation Month is every May.
Every May?
And some places do like town events or like walking tours during that month. Some places do like a proclamation by the town board that, you know, to celebrate town history. So yeah, there's lots of different things that you could do, but that's the National Preservation Month. So there are some places that do like their own preservation month or preservation week, like at a different time in the year. So you might think about when works best for like people being here, since sometimes May falls into like shoulder season and stuff like that. Yeah, so you don't have to do it in May, but having like a dedicated time to celebrate preservation success stories and.
But in some, I mean, it's a bad time for weather. You're gonna lose off season. I get something to do in May.
That's true.
We can come up with-
Besides Moab.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, you guys have to be here for it too. So. But yeah, so May is the National Preservation Month.
You can do it Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, and there's, you know, it could be an opportunity to put out like Castle Rock was doing little like realtor style signs in front of their historic properties, just being like, this is, you know, an important historic place. So people walking around town, like it draws attention to the history of the town.
And
it's cost effective.
yeah, it could
Yeah,
be
that's not too.
versus getting a plaque that's hundreds of dollars for everybody, but it could be a temporary
Yeah,
thing.
You
just
can
to
even get
promote it.
those things that like sit there, the whiteboards and color them. You know, those are right.
yes, there's lots of different ideas that, you know, I always think you don't reinvent the wheel. You can look at what other people are doing and take what will work best for you guys from their ideas. But yeah, oh, sorry, Madison, we go back again. We were talking about yeah, so anyway, when you're thinking about the future of your local historic preservation program, you guys have a great preservation plan that was just really cool to see put together by your staff and like through the local level. So I just wrote down the 3 priorities from that. I know you're updating it right now, but just to think about creating the foundational toolbox for the preservation program, promoting public awareness, and collaborating with property owners. And then the next slide is about the recommendations from the survey projects that was just completed like 2 days ago. So in that, Ron recommended continuing intensive level and reconnaissance level survey, continuing to develop the historic context through at least the 1970s. Just walking through town today, I think you should probably go through at least the 80s, but like thinking about when there were changes happening and making sure that you're capturing that sort of like eclectic spirit of the town, I think is really important, so that you're able to basically like understand the history of the town and how it developed over time. And I think a lot of those changes were more recent than the 1970s. So I think that you know, you guys would know best, obviously, like the history, but the more recent history, but thinking about different eras of the town's history. And then talking to Ron, he thought it was really important to support your currently landmark properties, potentially by adopting the intensive level surveys that he completed as part of the landmark nomination, so that you have that like factual information to help sort of beef up the landmark nominations over time. So that might be a good idea moving forward as well. And then I just had some questions to think about. So as you're planning for the future of the preservation program, what properties in town are under the threat, or areas of town are under the threat of development and demolition? What histories have not yet been explored and recorded? It sounds like pretty much anything that wasn't in the historical context study. So there's a lot of future work that could be done based on what you guys are interested in. What projects do you think would generate community enthusiasm? What projects are supported by other planning documents for the town? What projects align with wider community goals such as housing affordability, sustainability, economic development, and things like that, where historic preservation can really go hand in hand with those if it's presented in that way. Like I think a lot of times preservation is seen as the enemy of affordable housing, but when it's preserving a smaller home versus like being demolished and building a giant like box on the site, then you are preserving we call it naturally occurring affordable housing, where you don't need to build something new to keep a property that's more affordable. And then what projects help to support the development and growth of your preservation program? And what would be quick wins for you guys to help gain momentum for the program? So those are just some questions to think about as you're building on this survey project. And I guess I'm curious to see what you guys are interested in moving forward.
Have we talked in any way about getting another grant for something?
It has been the intent that once this grant is done, in the future, we will get a grant to the rest of town. Or we will apply to get a grant. It's not guaranteed.
There are no grants available for educational purposes, are there?
There are, so you can apply for a CLG grant for education and outreach projects, or a state historical fund grant. The benefit for CLG grants is that there's no match required, where SHF requires a 25% match. But you can do, so right now, oh yeah, there's different education outreach projects that you can do. So we've had like, we'd had a great third grade workbook. So like working with the elementary schools and getting the histories told in schools. We've had different preservation workshops. We had a great Adobe workshop in Sawatch. We actually did 3 workshops. We could do things like how to preserve your historic home workshop and things like that with a contractor. You can do different like realtor guides or property owner guides for their historic properties.
Is that a separate? Can we get information on that?
Yeah, that's all part of the same pool of funding for the CLG grant, but yeah, I can definitely send the grant information and some examples.
We're starting to work on getting word out to the public, and it would be great if we could, like, Eagle County a few years ago had the Colorado Train Museum come up to Eagle County and talk about how the trains were brought to the mountains, which was an educational. This book here was written by a local student on Belden Mines, and it was funded through Eagle County Historical Town and Intern Library District. And he and the principal that helped him or came up with the idea, and they worked together, were nominated Historical Citizens of the Year this past week.
Yeah.
So for us, it's hard to come up with money for some of those events.
Right.
If there's something we could apply for and get information on, and if we got some grant money, then maybe we can do some things like that.
Yeah,
because I've gone to 2 of them now, and there's been at least 50 people at each one of them.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it has some sort of place-based tie. So, I mean, it can't just be like random history, I guess, but needs to have like some kind of place-based tie for the historic preservation grants, but I'm sure you could come up with.
Because he did on Belden Mine just out of.
Yeah, so that's clearly an identifiable place that it's related to. So yeah, you can definitely get guest speakers and pay for their per diem, and
That would be great.
we can't call it an honorarium, but like a speaker fee.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely something that would be eligible. And then also like mailers to get people to come out, or door hangers or
We
things
did
like that.
walking now,
Oh, great.
because we don't have somebody who can literally walk through town, but Cindy pulled it together, and it's attached to the sign down in front of Alpine Kind, and they can just pull one and walk around town themselves.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's some things like that we're starting to work on and that have been achieved. We haven't
Yeah.
finished everything yet. Because it takes time.
Yeah, but yeah, we funded like historic podcasts before. So if you wanted to record somebody doing, narrating the walking tour, then people could download it on their phones and like listen to
You were gonna possibly create news. What did you?
I was just thinking of like a stand-up table thing to start, you know.
With a
not
loop on it though, you said that you could show. It's in the minutes. You said you'd done for the schools.
Oh, that's a slide. That's a little different. That's like a slideshow that you can kind of lend out.
Would we need money to be able to do that?
We wouldn't really need a lot to start, but
I mean, things like that.
What do you know? What like amounts those grants tend to?
So the maximum is 25,000, which is fairly small, but we have a current grant like the town of Lyons, where they're doing a property owner brochure and some mailings for $2,500. So that actually made it easier to fit into the grant, like because we just had like that amount left over from our other grants. So it was easy to fund that one.
Does it have to go to one specific thing, or can you acquire the money and then use it throughout the year for different things?
Like if it's in the communication outreach, do you have to define exactly what you're going to use?
You'd have to define it in advance, but you could use it for multiple things as long as it was defined in advance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, wonderful.
The grant reviewers are really particular about like what exactly is this money going toward, but it could be like a bundle.
It's like, reproducing photos and laminating and that kind of thing. Like, I don't think to start you'd need too much money. I just got a grant to take the kids on a hike, and it was like $200, but it was enough to get all my students out and rent a bus, and
that would be great.
And I could have used more, but I wanted to get the grant. And I was afraid if I asked for too much money, I'd say no. So a little, I think, if you're willing to put the work in, can go a long way.
Yeah. So yeah, you could ask for a few $1,000s for community engagement projects, or I don't think you need to worry about asking for too much as long as it makes sense and like matches up with a bid. Yeah, and then if there's a good argument for urgency around the funding, which I think given budgetary constraints and just like building up momentum around your preservation program, you could definitely have a great argument for that.
Can you get it to buy equipment to do those projects? In other words, we have elderly seniors here, like one who's almost 100 years old. She's in her 100th year. I went up there with another member of town, and we asked questions and talked and just made notes. But we don't have a recorder to do with or anything to video it. But is there money for that, to get that equipment?
I would have to reread the historic preservation manual, but I will get an answer for you for that. But yeah, I think oral histories would be a great.
And we've done 3 now, but we just have mishmash notes. And, when people are all talking, it's like if it's a husband and wife, they're one saying one thing, one saying the other. It's difficult to do that.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, and then depending on how much you want to do, History Colorado actually rents out. I think it just takes a deposit. So I don't think you have to like pay a rental fee. I think there's a deposit amount and then you get it back at the end, but they do that oral history recording equipment to community members.
Good.
And you could ask our oral history curator for a training on that too, if it would be helpful, like training on how to conduct oral histories. That's a really big, we have a few communities that are really focusing on oral histories, especially if they have, you know, people who you want to get the history down, you know, as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking we should nominate Ella for Smucker's jar next year. Do you ever see that on TV? Okay.
She's like, what?
I guess I didn't know you could be nominated for the
They
job.
use pictures of people on Smucker jars with
Oh,
their
okay.
history that are turning 100 or more. And then they have a series of like 8 or 10 of them they announce that day on TV.
Yeah.
And it's just really cute. And I don't think it goes into the grocery stores on the jar or anything.
Right.
I think it's just a TV
Yeah.
event they do for seniors.
That's really cool. Yeah.
I don't know if it applies. Have you seen, I've recently seen Leadville is kind of teaming up with Twin Lakes and promotion, and I'm guessing they're kind of jointly affiliated with each other.
Yeah.
Is that common for two close by towns like Blackhawk to be kind of have a joint partnership, I guess, is
So I think that Leadville and Twin Lakes have a joint tourist board, which is why they're like working together that closely.
yeah. Do you think they're
Are they both registered local governments?
They are. Twin Lakes is actually a unincorporated town, so they would fall under Lake County's jurisdiction. But yeah, there's no, I mean, you could definitely work with local areas if you wanted to partner like on a, like let's say you wanted to do surveys of the local mines or something that are outside of the town jurisdiction.
because we have Redcliffe that haven't
Yeah.
really, I mean, we have some tourism stuff, brochures
We partner with
jointly.
tourism stuff.
Yeah.
Would it make sense to partner with them historically?
We don't
If-
have historic preservation.
Right.
Or
I'm wondering if whoever's up there would be interested in that. Or
We'd be happy to do like a incentives workshop with both of you, or you know, anything that would be helpful.
and I don't know if there's desire from them. I know they kind of keep quiet and do themselves a lot. But there's some new people moving in, and there's, you know, a little bit more money than was before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think-
Margaret's Cemetery.
Oh, really? Yeah, I guess I haven't seen that.
And they have, so 1 or 2 rooms in their old school that they have historical things in.
Okay.
Which we don't have because we don't have any place to put it.
Right.
Working on.
Working.
Yeah. Yeah, and they just got a grant for their town hall rehabilitation too.
They did.
The old one.
Yeah, the old town hall with the
I know they were
fire
working on that.
department door and everything. Yeah.
And they got that through Historic Colorado?
Yeah, it was in the October grant
Even though
round.
they're not are they a member of Historic Colorado?
So that property is on the state register, I think. So that made it able to qualify for a state
That's
historical.
right, that was in the paper. that they can funds.
Right, did you?
Yeah.
That team, they did it.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's an example of a change over time. You know, where like the town hall obviously wasn't originally a firehouse, but then you have that change over time with the garage door added and stuff like that. But that was obviously having a fire station in Redcliffe would be very important.
And then
So-
put towards stabilizing it and fixing it up.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been through that. I was on the fire department there, so they still
Oh, yeah.
have, or they used to have the old horse-drawn cart in there.
Yeah, I
with
think I
the
remember.
hose,
pictures
but I
of
don't
that.
know if Eagle River took that. But I know it was up there.
Yeah.
And the old jail behind it, which not many people know about.
Yeah, they definitely had pictures of that as part of their state register nomination. So there was a lot of debate in our office about like, were these changes over time appropriate? But I think, you know, it was such an important building there that you kind of have to say like that, yes, it's okay to change it to fit community needs.
So where, I always get hung up like finding stuff, you know, if I know where something is, I can jump on it. Can you repeat, I know you said it, where these grants are actually located on the
Yeah.
website, so I can kind of just
easily go in rather than like search for a long.
Yeah, well, I can just send Madison a list of links if that would be helpful, and then.
Is that a lot of trouble?
No, it's no big deal. It's part of my job, so.
That would
Um,
be good.
Yeah, and then if you do have property owners interested in tax credits or state historical fund grants, like I said, we're happy to do a workshop up here or a virtual talk or whatever would be helpful. So.
But almost all the tax credits, basically you have to remodel your place or improve.
Well, so for the residential
You
tax.
can't just have a house and claim it historic and then get tax benefits.
Right, exactly. Like you have to be doing some kind of work on it. The residential tax credit, the minimum expenditure is only $5,000 though. So if you're like doing any kind of work on your property, you could get a third of the costs back on that. But yeah, you have to be, I guess, paying someone to do the work, or if you're doing the work yourself, you would get the tax credits back on the material costs.
And you said a third of that cost is
It's 35% for the tax credit.
There's no way a town can get money from you to buy a historical building, is there?
So State Historical Fund does offer acquisition grants of up to $250,000.
Above,
It's up to 250,000.
which
Which is a parking space.
in this town, yes, but you know. 250.
Did you have one in mind?
But I don't know that price will work. But
Yeah, and then you would have to have match funding of 25% for that. So
which is $50,000, you know, 60,000,
Right.
65.
it's 25% of the project total. So I'm a historian, not a math person. And that can come from any source.
Can you have? I guess what I'm saying, does it matter? What if other people wanted to get involved in that? In other words, if we could get 250 from there, 25 from the town, other people want to donate towards it, is that?
Yes, yeah, you can do that. The only things that can't be matched are CLG grants with SHF grants, but you could have a different granting source. You could have private funding, public
Yeah.
funding. Yeah. And that actually shows community engagement and the importance of the property. So that helps you fill out the grant application.
It's very good.
Are they?
Thank you for thinking.
Are these, I don't know how to ask this question in a meaningful way, but are they fairly? Like I found out that this little grant I just got, like basically if you write the grant and it's on time and it's anything to do with, a certain topic, you get the money. Are
Right.
these that same way, or are they pretty competitive? Or?
They're fairly competitive. So I would say like they've got two pools of money. If you're going for up to $50,000, so your project is less than $50,000, then they award most of those projects. Like there'll be some that come in below the funding line. And then the ones that are between 50,000 and 250 are more competitive. So that might be like half of the projects get awarded. But they do have support, especially for first-time applicants. They'll do draft reviews and make sure that that each section of the application is clear and how it fits in with your project.
In your opinion, what should we be looking at possibly as a town that would be most applicable to us?
I think thinking about public engagement and how you can build up an appreciation of the town's history is probably a good place to work right now. And then also, yeah, just thinking about different buildings that might be under threat of either demolition or like massive redevelopment. And then making sure you have like a survey on those properties and, can at least have it documented, but potentially reach out to property owners and let them know that there's incentives for maintaining the historic character. So if you feel like there's either like more intensive level surveys that would be helpful based on the windshield survey, or a different part of town that you would want survey on, it's good to have that kind of inventory of historic properties. And then I guess in addition to that, as a board, I think it would be, like I said, important to understand like when you think major developments were happening in town and like different changes were taking place. So, you know, Ron's work didn't really cover like any sort of ski era history, and that's so important, and like recreation industries and things like that. So I think that it would be helpful for you all to identify which sort of like eras were really important in the development of town, and get somebody to write a historic context up to that period.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of our history has been wiped clean from, you know, I'd say 60s to the 80s era. A lot of buildings were lost, and
Yeah.
no one really even bothered to photograph the old buildings or document them, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
We have a lot of recorded history from the turn of the century, and a lot of postcards were made, I guess, that captured parts of town and a few photos, but you know, with the lack, I don't know, we were so, I think, impoverished after the mine closed, and you know, I'm guessing even 60s on, just businesses left town, and as soon as they left town and went down valley, they you know, the buildings got torn down, and with almost no record of what was there, which is, to me, is kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a really unfortunate, but I do think that you're left with a place that is like unique and really interesting, and like I don't know, I think it has its like own draw to it. So, you know, what happened in the more modern history that made Minturn into what it is today.
And a lot of the people moved on that possibly had photos. You know, it's every time like some new photo pops up of something that I haven't seen, it's just like, oh my God.
I mean, that might be where you think about doing a project that includes like a call for photos from people who were residents in the past, and doing more engagement like in that way too.
Yeah, because I know there's attics full of stuff that just
Right.
haven't been gone through, and
So that's where maybe like a wider oral history project where you're identifying family members who might have moved away would be good, and maybe they still have different resources like that.
yeah, I mean, I know we even a couple, was it 2 years ago, I found a photo of the old ski lodge that was at Dow Junction, an A-frame, and I had never seen that,
Yeah.
even though it was a shortly lived ski resort, and then Vail bought it and demolished it. But it was a really cool building. It just didn't last very long, and I know almost nothing about it except for one photo with a little comment on it.
So few early ski resources left in the state, so I think it's cool just to know about that.
And technically, is it outside of town? Included down, yeah. But in our ice house, which I did buy a book on ice houses of Colorado, and there is photos of it in there, which is like the first photo I've ever seen of it, and some drawings of it.
Yeah.
We just have a foundation now, but it's hard to, to me, it'd be nice to get a placard for some of these really cool things that almost nobody knows existed, but were kind of at the time very important for the area.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I always think even like if there's foundations remaining, then that could be a future archaeology project, or you could you'd have to have like some kind of expertise in the archaeology.
So when you say that, like finding little artifacts that have been buried, and
right, that would let you know more about how the building operated and how people lived at that time.
Because we do have a foundation, at least, and one page of photos.
Yeah, so there's always potential to learn more information about how that ice house operation worked, and how people interacted with it.
Yeah, because from what I've read, we were like the lattice capital of the country, and
For a short period of time.
For a short period of time, and that ice house was a big part of it, because it allowed us to ship out lettuce across the country for a little bit, which to me like put back then intern on the map.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just reading
Across.
Buena
great.
Vista's lettuce history, and well, so my husband's family has a place in Eagleville, which is where I'm staying tonight. But we were talking about this like connected lettuce history, and how it supported all these other industries. So you need people to like build the wooden crates for the lettuce. You need the ice house, you need the railroad, and all this stuff. So it creates all these other jobs along with the actual lettuce farming. I don't know, I get into these like interconnected things. So yeah, I think it just shows, the importance of that to the local area.
Yeah, and I have a lot of neighbors that don't even know it, the foundation's there.
Yeah.
Have no idea about it, have never heard about it, and
Never even noticed the graffiti down there either.
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But to me, that was one of the significant things connected to the railroad that made us important for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And if that railroad infrastructure wasn't there, then the lettuce never would have gotten out too. So
Right.
it all plays in together.
Yeah, and then we're obviously connected to the mining. Even
Right.
though we weren't mining, we're just railroad, but
Right, we
both
have all the support industries in town in order for the miners to survive.
yeah.
Too, so.
That's why I kind of think it's important that Redcliffe and us would kind of group together, because we really almost didn't exist without each other.
Yeah, definitely. And there's different opportunities, even like with CLG grants, if you wanted to do a survey of a property that's outside of town limits, as long as it has some kind of relationship with town history, you can get funding to look at those properties as well. Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but like there is an opportunity there to look outside of town limits. Like we had one grant project in Kiowa County. They had this horrible like blizzard that killed a bunch of children on the school bus in the 1930s. And so it's called the Towner Bus Tragedy. And it's super important to the local history, like this massive impactful event. And so they did a survey looking at the different sites associated with this bus tragedy, where anyway, it's very, very sad to read about. But part of that was in Prowers County, but they were still able to get a grant because it's such a huge part of the local history, and helps inform, like, to this day, how people feel about like their schools and the landscape, things like that. So if you wanted to look at more mining resources or anything like that is surrounding the town, you could potentially get grants to help do that as well.
Well, I think we got some good information tonight. We can buy
Oh,
equipment.
I didn't
We need the money to buy a building. God only
Yeah,
knows
so
all
I'll-
that, but it's
Cheap, Billy.
I'll send some follow-up information on the different grant
Sure.
opportunities, as well as like a potential like ideal list of education and outreach projects.
for anybody who might. I mean, like the train thing, even though it was done a few years ago in Eagle, bringing it to this end when we have the train.
Yeah.
Working the mines would be she was wonderful, the talk she gave.
Yeah, that's great. And knowledgeable trained people are usually very enthusiastic about giving talks and stuff. So that sounds great. But yeah, and I'm always here as a resource for you guys. So you can always reach out or have Madison reach out about anything. So don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we also have the actual mine, Battle Mountain.
It's near us.
Oh, wait, it's now not included, correct? Okay.
But there is a link this from the past. We could probably prevail upon to get a grant for people.
Yeah, just my parents were in Grass Valley, which was the largest gold mine in the country, and the state actually took it over and preserved it. And you can go into the mines, they have a blacksmith shop, they have the map room. And I just wish someone had done that to Gilman before everything got looted and destroyed.
Well, it's a very contaminated site.
Yeah.
We would not be allowed, even if it hadn't been looted, to.
I think they all,
Site.
but they somehow made it work and turned it into a fabulous park. Anyways, sidetracked.
Yes. If it ever
Um,
becomes not a super fun site.
So that ends the special presentation. On to business items.
Have no business.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah,
Thank you very,
Thank you so much.
It's really, really interesting and informative. Thank you.
It was great.
Thanks, Dan.
You have anything to comment?
No.
Yeah, because we were, well, the first couple of years just busy just setting up everything, and now I think I'd like to get people excited in the community.
You realize we now have some plaques, brass plaques to put up.
Ooh.
Madison, tell us.
Yes. Okay, this can take the place of staff reports, even though there's no staff report. Yes, so we have plaques now for all of our designated properties. They are in the format that y'all approved of however long ago. Don't even get me started on how long it's taken to generate these plaques. We have committed as a town to be providing the basic information plaques, date of build, what it's called, kind of basic information.
Like Nelson residence.
And then we will partner with the individual property owners if they would like to do additional in-depth plaques. Get them in touch with the boundary so that it all kind of looks the same, but we are not, unfortunately, we do not have the budget to commit to purchasing any additional plaques above and beyond the basic ones. But we can certainly help them if they would like more in-depth ones.
Has anybody picked him up and put him up yet? Do they know about him?
Nope.
Oh.
Upstairs.
Christmas present,
That's present. There you go.
or in this town, Halloween present, maybe.
They'd be up for the market.
Well, I know Eagle has several different layers. Well, some buildings just have a 1.5 by 11 taped to the window with a QR code discussing the building, and then others actually have a metal plaque on a mounted post outside their
Are they
house.
local government? I don't,
They aren't,
they aren't, no. They've got the historical society, but they're not a local government.
But they do have a map, and part of the Eagle County, you know, it shows a walking map too, and
Yes, and
which,
so does Gibson have a walking map.
yeah. And I just haven't gone through it, but a renter just left Leadville's and
Me,
historic Twin Lake Guides, which was a supplement of their newspaper, and one of the renters in our houses left that. So,
Awesome.
yeah. And I also found the book that I've been missing for a while that talks about the history of Holy Cross. And not only Holy Cross, but it talks about Malloy Park in the trappers' days. And it's like everything related to Mount Holy Cross and how famous that was. And I keep lending the book out and then not getting it back, but I finally found mine in my trailer this last weekend. So I'm excited about that. If anyone wants to borrow it, and I will write the name down if we borrowed it this time.
Okay, we're not doing discussion direction. I already gave a staff report. Are there any historic preservation commission comments?
are there any what?
Historic preservation commission comments.
I have one.
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
Abby, do you have anything?
I do not.
She's been very quiet. I just said to jump in.
I have a,
Poke them a little bit to get them to talk.
well, it's a lot to take in when you're new, so. Real quick, I gotta go unfortunately, but I am now free, so I can get to work on something, but I know that there's rules on how I can communicate with everybody, you know, so I'm just putting it out there now. If you want to help me just get a preliminary display going, let me know, call me, email me. Okay.
For the markets?
I'm thinking more the concert, but it could be definitely the market. I just, that was not on my brain as much, but
As of today, go ahead. Finish.
that, no, I'm done, thanks.
Last year I had a little table. I only did it for 2 hours in 4 weeks at the market that said historical. And I handed out Bill's book, things from Eagle County Historical gave me things, the posters from Beth Levin, the smaller ones like that. This year, Rob is putting up a Minturn booth. And as of today, we will have a small space in there that we can put historical things, and different people can come in and help him with the booth and talk about historical, et cetera, like that. Cindy's putting a, like a little schedule. Tammy, you wanted to do that. You offered to do that.
When when I'm back in town, I
Once you get
definitely.
here, and that works out fine because I'll talk to you about that. We need some help in August.
Oh, okay, I'm in.
Yeah. So we will have a little thing there where the public can come in. We can have a little jar there for donations. We can have that thing with the QR code that I had last year that they could donate through that Cindy put together for us. And we have our walking map now and things like that. I don't know how big it is yet. I'm gonna walk down there this Saturday and see the booth and see what's going on. But we will look for other people to maybe help out with that, if that's something you might want to do too. But you take people and talk to them forever.
I'd love to have something like the board that we have down at Little Beach talking about the Myers Barn too, to get some excitement now that we're actually doing some stuff.
Yeah. We can bring up what we're doing down there.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd love to try to promote it and try to get people to donate to this project. And we have a few people that have put up a bunch of money, and I'm trying to put in lots of volunteer work. And to date, a couple of weeks ago, we got the roof off the Myers Barn, and with myself and Johnny Love and Ken and Woody and this guy that lives across the street, Scotty, that I just met, and we're like two peas in the pod, and super hard worker and loves history and a very hard worker. So we got the whole roof, which was the part I was worried about, disassembled and labeled and moved to Little Beach, and we're working on the foundation currently, and it's plotted and they're digging it out this week. I personally and Woody are going and trying to find logs tomorrow to replace the rotten ones.
Pictures of this process.
Yeah, Woody actually had hired his cinematographer, who's got 4 Emmys, that Woody came out with a sailing movie recently. He went to school at UCLA for cinematography. So he was taking photos of us as we're throughout the day, as we were disassembling the roof and moving it to Little Beach.
That on.
And we don't have continuous, but he would come, 2 or 3 times a day as we had a crew there. I'm currently cleaning up the logs before we move them, trying not to use water, just air gun, and labeling every single log and every single chinking so it goes back in the correct place. But we do have some rotten logs, so we had a free donor that has some older logs that hopefully will match the ones that are now rotten and kind of buried in the ground since it never had a foundation. And yeah, it's been what, six years of process, and originally I was told it could never be done. But we're getting it done slowly, and we're still looking for ideas, but my dream is it to be our history museum and any little artifacts and photos we can hang in there. I'm also in contact with the Walker family, who owns 400 Main Street, and their dad just passed away that owned the house, and they restored a log cabin up Pitkin Creek, I believe, and I watched the whole documentary on it.
Bighorn.
Is it Bighorn? Yes. And
Yeah, I saw that.
so I just talked to his son Andy, who's maybe in his 60s, and part of the documentary was actually filmed in the Walker house, and I stumbled across it during COVID, I think, on History Channel or something like that. So anyways, I have his phone number, and he offered any help. And it also, yeah, the little house on Harrison, across from the gas station. Yeah. So the good news is it's we short-term rent it, but it's almost a history museum in itself from the 1960s. Everything in there, they've never replaced anything but light bulbs. We did have to remove the toilet and replace the powder blue toilet. It's just clogging up too much. But besides that, it's they're gonna keep it in the family, so I'm very excited for that. And apparently their dad that passed was once the mayor of Minturn and died in the mine. And no, it's before that. But it's kind of, it also could be some candidate for a history museum and someday. But the good news is family doesn't want to sell it, which means it will hopefully be preserved.
Awesome.
And,
Great news.
yeah, and I did have a thought about, it's been the Myers Barn, which will be moving to Little Beach. I see it at our concerts as being something that people can walk into, and it could become a concession stand. But I do know if we're selling food out of it, it probably can't be, unclean logs and material. So I'm gonna have to talk to the county to see what use we could put in there, if we could sell stuff possibly, or it could be a venue for weddings and it could be open. Town of Redstone has a little tiny history log cabin that has a running video in it. And someone locks it up once every night, but you can just walk into it and watch the little history video and see the old photos and learn about the Ogilvies that ran the coal mine. And it's really cool. So it's kind of was my inspiration for this project. But it'd be really cool if you had a wedding and you could, walk inside of this and take photos and have a nice deck where you could relax at, and it could be a handicap viewing area for our concerts also. So, and
Could take wedding photos inside. I've got
yeah, I want it to be a place where people want to take photos. And Steamboat has their little postcard of the little barn with the mountain in the back, and it'd be awesome if we could do the same and promote the town with that.
Well, that would be good because we don't have a postcard. They're coming back into popularity.
Oh, it's kind of sad now. Yeah. But it's in my quest for history and eBay items that incorporate Minturn. It's matchbook covers and postcards are like one of the few things that has survived history. And I always think they're important, and that's what collectors collect. And one of the few things that survives all the businesses that we've ever had in town. And we could produce matchbooks with Minturn on it. Someone will collect.
So, historical commission comments.
Kelly's done.
Yep.
Future agenda items, we could talk about things like postcards and matchbooks. Anything else? Anybody thinking about?
The historic preservation plan update will be on the next agenda.
Okay. So can I make a motion?
You can.
To adjourn the meeting? We'll put it there, Kelly.
Yep, we'll second that.
June 16th, a motion to adjourn the historical preservation committee meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.